Alright everybody, welcome to part 3. Let's continue. First we have Initiation Bell. Once per turn you may pay 1 to create and draw a 2/2 monk with endurance if you have played a spell this turn. So this card is really bad. Like if the card would just put a monk, a 2/2 endurance monk into play for 1, it would be pretty nice, at least for like how much it costs. But effectively, you just can play a 2/2 endurance for 3 power for free once per turn, and only if you play the spell this turn. So you need a spell, you need enough power to play the spell, and at least 1 more power to create the monk. Then if you want to play the monk, another 2 power. So super slow and very weak. Clearly not a constructed card. In limited, however, in decks that have really a lot of spells, this might be okay, but not great. And I think most decks will just not have enough spells to make this anywhere near playable. Next we have Sirocco Elementalist. This card's actually really cool, but unfortunately a bit too situational. A 3 power 2/2 is pretty weak, but the summon would totally make up for it if it was reliably usable. The problem is putting an enemy unit with flying into their hand is fairly narrow, and there are a fair share of decks and situations where there will just be not any flyers, and then you have a 3 power 2/2 that doesn't really do anything. Also, it only works on enemy units with flying, so you can't even like return one of your units that has been, for example, permafrosted or something like that. So it's also even more narrow there, so you can't even pair it with your own flyers. So yeah, in constructed this unfortunately makes it not really playable, which is sad because the card generally is pretty cool. But in limited I can see this being an okay card to fill out your deck, since flyers are usually the biggest problem in limited, and this is a decent way to keep them from racing you while you try to race back on the ground. Next we have another 3-drop, Watchful Manera, 3 power 2/4, and once per turn you may scout if you have played a spell this turn. Clearly not a constructed card, but in limited a 3 power 2/4 is decent, and if you get to scout occasionally for free with the spells that you play, even better. So this is a very reasonable 3-drop for a more defensive limited deck, especially in sealed. Next we have Worm Calling. This card's kind of interesting. In constructed there could be some kind of control deck that could use this as a finisher, because it is actually a pretty good stabilizer and finisher, since a 5 power 7/7, the sandworms are 5 power 7/7s, are pretty high impact and stop basically everything on the ground. And yeah, make 4, and 2 of them from 1 card makes for a pretty decent finisher. But yeah, not sure if a deck like that is good enough and will exist. Outside of that, I don't think this is very playable. Maybe, I don't know, as a one-off for your market against grindier decks to have 2 strong threats, but even there you might have better options depending. But it's an interesting card, and in limited this is pretty powerful. You usually should have a deck that just allows you to buy the time to get these online, and then 2 5 power 7/7s are gonna do a whole lot for you in limited. Next we here have Fierce Mosa Raptor. That looks kinda cool. Very weird dinosaur. Yeah, we get a 4 power 3/4, which in limited already is a pretty decent deal. And with Tribute we also get Killer, which makes this even better. In constructed this is just too weak on all fronts, but in limited this is a pretty good 4-drop. I can see picking this really highly in draft. Next we have Gathering Lights. You play 2 1/1 Wisps, so just 1 power 1/1s, no flying, nothing, and you gain 1 health for each of your units, so you get 2 or more health. Yeah, if those 2 Wisps would at least be flying, I think the card would be at least worth a consideration, but this way it's just a really bad card. In constructed anyway, but even in limited this seems really bad. Next we have Nash, Pride Master. the guy basically looks exactly like the Prince of Persia from the Prince of Persia movie, if you ask me. Hairstyle, beard, weapons, clothing and all. Just like 1-for-1 carbon copy of the Prince of Persia. Yeah, we get a 4-power 4-4. If you can reliably activate the tribute, you get a 7-7, which is a pretty good deal. And then the attack ability is pretty nice, as long as he's a 7-7 at least, because then discarding the top card of your deck, and if it was a unit, you both trigger tribute for other tribute cards, which is nice, and all your other units except Nash are invulnerable to damage this turn, which is pretty nice. But yeah, the problem most likely will be that you can't trigger tribute well enough, especially on curve, and then this guy is just too weak, and there's also so many other good 4-drops in the game in time, and usually the second color that you paired with, that this guy will have a hard time making it into a deck, even though he's pretty decent. In Limited, this is a really powerful card. Easy first pick if you see it. Next we have Insatiable Ceratosaur. Once again, too weak and constructed, 4-power 3-3. Even as a dinosaur, not where you want to be. If it attacks, it automatically spends your remaining power, which is a problem because you basically have to do your stuff before you attack, because afterwards you can't anymore because the Ceratosaur is eating your power to get +X attack and +X health. In Limited, however, this is a pretty solid 4-drop that can get out of hand and take over the game if the opponent doesn't answer it quickly. So yeah, nice pick for Limited. Next we have Lumen Attendant. Kamato's exclusive spoiler. It's a 4-power 3-3. It's void bound, so it can't leave the void once it's in there, and has an ultimate where you get to pay 3 and discard a card to draw another card from your void, and you get a 1-1 Wisp. Once again, just a 1-1 ground guy, no flyer, nothing. So all in all, this card is just too weak in stats and too slow with the ability to really be worth it, even for like Radiant Wisp synergies. So I don't see this making it into a constructed deck. In Limited, once again, this is pretty decent. The body is not as bad there, and getting back possibly your best card could just make the difference between winning and losing. Next we have Primeval pullover. That's kind of a lot going on there. It's a big dinosaur that looks like a Volunk, or Aunt Volunk, and some weird dinosaur bird style looking thing. Apparently the bird on the Volunk's horn is the Primeval pullover. It's a 1-2 flying for 4, pretty bad deal, and you give one of your other units +1/+2 while you have Primeval pullover. So effectively you get 1-2 in flying and 1-2 without flying, so 2-4 in stats. Not great, definitely not constructed playable, but an okay card in Limited at least, I think. Next we have Senspout Mirage. It's a 4-cost 0-5 ambush, so basically a more expensive, slightly smaller Dune Phantom, but on summon you ready your other units. So yeah, this is a neat surprise, clearly not something that you usually care about in Constructed, but in Limited this can be a pretty solid card. And as the last card for the third part, we have Spiteful Lumen, another 4-cost 3-3 Radiant. And on summon, you give one of your Wisps deadly, which is neat with all these random small Wisps to make them a bit more relevant. But yeah, clearly not a constructed card. In Limited, if you have enough Wisps, this can be a decent 4-drop, but a 4-power 3-3 is still pretty below the curve, so nothing to be excited about in Limited either. Okay, that's it for the third part. We are not quite done yet, so don't go anywhere just yet. The fourth and final part of the time cards is coming up next.